Every single homeschool mom has a natural bent towards how she is going to homeschool. And specifically for today's topic of this episode, she has a natural bent towards maybe being super organized and has a huge desire to stay on plan. The other side of maybe that extreme could be that a mom is really flexible and she just goes with the flow. However, there's many of us, I would say probably most homeschool moms, that fall somewhere in between. We might kind of lean towards or have a natural bent towards one side or another. So think of this as a line. And on one end of the line is the hyper organized, we are staying on plan no matter what, whether the ship is going down, we have got to accomplish this stuff. And the other extreme might be just go with the flow and we'll see kind of what happens. And you probably can think of yourself towards one of those ends or not. However, there's a lot of us that are just right there in between, but might kind of lean towards one side or not or the other. Today we're going to examine your natural proclivity and how you can achieve balance between being organized and hitting those homeschool goals, but also being flexible and really, really enjoying these years with your children at home with you.
Welcome to Little by Little Homeschool Podcast, where you'll learn tips and strategies that will empower you to home educate your children. I'm Leigh Nguyen, a homeschool mom of over 12 years, which includes 2 graduates. When I started homeschooling, I was pretty much on my own and was desperate for encouragement and help. My mission is to be a source of encouragement and help to you. Whether you are just beginning your homeschool journey or you're deep into the homeschool lifestyle, Little by Little Homeschool wants to help you stay the course because all the time you are investing into your children is completely worth it. If you're ready to take your homeschool to new levels, keep listening.
Let's remember that God made you, specifically you, and He gave you your specific children. However, there is this thing called sanctification, and the homeschool years are ripe for some sanctification within your own life, within the homeschool mom's life. I actually just spoke on this topic at the Little by Little Homeschool Conference this past weekend, which, by the way, was amazing. It was so incredible. Just so blessed by all the moms who came. It was, yeah, we just kind of kicked off this thing and it was so good. If you came, I hope that you walked away truly blessed and reinvigorated for the rest of your homeschool year. And if you were not able to come, I hope that you can come next year. We have plans on doing this again next year, and I promise that I'll share more information. So stay tuned. Sometime early in 2025, I will be sharing more information about the next year's conference. So I'm just so excited. Anyway, let's get back to the topic. If you didn't figure out, I can lean towards being organized. Don't act shocked. I mean, you kind of have to be semi-organized to be able to have a podcast and to be able to put it out and to do a conference and all that stuff. But really, I'm not one of those people that are hyper organized and have everything super planned. People think that about me, and it's kind of funny when some friends will come over for the first time and they're like, "Oh, okay, your house is neat, but that's because you don't have a ton of stuff." I'm like, "Yeah, look at my junk drawers. Open up some of my cabinet doors, and you'll be like, oh, okay, so she's not super organized." I am organized enough to pull things off and maybe to fool some people, I guess, but enough that with the stuff that it matters. And the older I get, the more I realize what does matter and what I need to be organized in and what things I can kind of let go. Throughout the homeschool years, God has taught me to just enjoy the moments, to be more spontaneous, and to capitalize on the ability to be flexible since homeschoolers, that is one of the golden gems of homeschooling, is that we get to be flexible. We get to come up with our own, we'll say in air quotes, schedule, because it doesn't have to be a schedule, our own routine, our own rhythm, our own feel to the day. We get to do that. And homeschooling is just right for that. So let me remind you of that this is a great time for you to be spontaneous. This is a great time for you to be organized. This is a time for you to be flexible and to lean into the moments. How do you actually do that? How do you achieve balance between being organized and being flexible? I've got some key points I want to make here that I hope will stick into your brain, or maybe you can write them down and they will make a difference in your homeschool and how you approach it. But the first thing is to be organized enough to achieve your homeschool vision and goals. Are you organized enough to just achieve those? That is a great place to start. And if you are not there, then let's get organized enough to achieve those. And you have to have that vision and those goals written down. If you don't have them written down, you can easily forget them and easily forget what you are reaching towards. And we get to do this together in your homeschool blueprint. And I highly encourage you to check that out because I have seen such great success with all the moms that have gone through it. I've gone through it myself years ago when I put together all this. And then finally I was like, oh, I can actually put this together and share this with others. And it's what I wish I had when I first began. It's what I wish I had a couple years in as I was just kind of I felt like I was groping around in the dark trying to figure things out, but we get to do that in your homeschool blueprint and it just lays out everything. You can get all that information at littlebylittlehomeschool.com/blueprint. And the link is in the show notes for you too. But if you do not have direction, you will be wandering. So no direction leads you to wandering, which wandering is not being flexible. It's not the same thing. Wandering is when you are doing it just aimlessly, again, maybe groping around the dark or just kind of like, we'll do this, we'll do that. Oh, they're doing that in public school. We should probably do that. Oh, my friend who's homeschooling is doing that. Oh, that homeschool influencer I saw on social media, she's doing this, so I have to go ahead and do that. Or just kind of blissfully, just kind of wandering, oh, we'll see kind of a little bit what we pick up, which is not what unschooling is. If you are not familiar with unschooling or if you would like more information about it, I did do a podcast episode about it, and I will drop that link for that one in the show notes for you so you can go and listen to that. So that's not the same thing. Wandering, just like, we'll see kind of what happens, is not quite the same as unschooling. A lot of them do have goals and they do provide resources and give direction and guidance and walk alongside their kids. So it's not the same thing. But if you don't have direction, you're going to be wandering around, and wandering around is not flexibility. That's not the flexibility that we're going for here. And the Bible even says where people have lack of a vision, they perish. Now, does that mean that you all are just going to keel over? If you have no vision, you're going to keel right over right now? No, but it can lead to perishing just in other ways and just kind of little ways that you just are not reaching your full potential and not glorifying God to the greatest and not living so much more differently than the culture around you. So we have got to have a vision and goals and be organized enough to achieve those. And your homeschool blueprint, when you get into that, it's going to help you along with that. Second point I want to make is you don't have to feel like you have to have a plan for the entire year planned out. Now, you might be super hyper organized and you might have a plan. But if you don't have a plan, do not feel guilty. Guess what? I am in my 14th year of homeschooling, graduated my two oldest, and I am with my third one, and he's in the middle of his high school education. Guess what? I don't plan the entire year out. Just having resources and curriculum and goals is enough planning for me, and it can be enough planning for you as well. I know what curriculum and what resources and what are the goals that we want to reach and things that can come alongside you. I have that written out as a vision for this year, along with the specific goals. And I have a bigger vision for our entire homeschool as well. But it can look like this. It can look like maybe having, for example, a list of read aloud books that you'd like to get to this year. Now, that list of read aloud books, there might be 30 of them on here, and you might only have time for 10 of them. This could be personal reading lists that maybe you have for your children, and you've curated a list of books for them to read. And you say, I don't care which order you read these in. Some moms love to be able to have just all those books for them on the bookshelf and they can just kind of pick them out. Now, if you don't want to get the books, you don't have space for the books, don't want to spend the money on the books, and you need to borrow them from the library, then you'll have to be a little bit more strategic with it. But if you have a couple of those books at a time and you just say, hey, which book do we want to do for our read aloud next? And you read the book. And guess what? When that's done, you pick the next book. That can be enough planning as well. You have that goal of the read aloud you want to do, say together, and you just read one book and you continue at it. You're diligent and work at it maybe every single day or longer on some days and shorter on other days. And when that book is complete and you say the end, you close it up and you just pick the next book. That can be enough planning for you. So don't feel like you have to. I see often, and if you do have a whole all year planned out and that works for you, that's great. When we drop down here in just a minute and we start talking about the flexibility, I want you to make sure that you include that as well. but it often still makes me even feel guilty for not having my entire year planned out and what we're going to do every month, every week, every day. And I'm like, oh, how am I achieving success in my homeschool if I don't have it planned out? So I don't think that that appeals to everybody. Again, you're going to have a natural bent. Let's also temper that with some flexibility because we can become very legalistic in that this is what we have to do and this is what we have to accomplish. If the need to be hyper organized in your homeschool is keeping you from enjoying this time with your kids, I want to encourage you to step back a little bit and not use that organization as so legalistic and that you have to stay on track or everything's going to go to trash. That's not the case. And maybe some of you are thinking about homeschooling. You might be that person who's thinking about homeschooling saying, I'm not organized enough. You don't have to plan out the entire year. I think it's important to have that vision and those goals so you have some guardrails, some parameters, you have some direction because there's times where things are going to come up and you're just going to say, I just kind of want this on autopilot and we just accomplish what we need to. So, coming up with those goals, having those maybe lists of books and those resources, but you have to be diligent in order to carry that out. Those books, those read alouds, they don't get read aloud if nobody's reading them aloud. So you have to be diligent and just little by little, every single day or a couple days a week, whatever your schedule you have for homeschooling, you just continue at it. I find it very beneficial to plan out week by week. And I can just be organized for that week because I know what is going on that week. Granted, there are things that are coming up that will just pop up that we don't even know that are unexpected. And we don't know those are coming, but we know things about maybe, oh, I'm bringing a meal to somebody. So just like this week, I'm like, I'm bringing a meal to somebody tomorrow, actually. And I have this other thing coming on this other day. And so I can plan things around that because I know what's going to be going on, like what's on our calendar, what's in our schedule for that week. And then with that, we have thoughts of future weeks. So, for example, I had the conference coming up and I was like, we are going to be diligent and we are going to make sure we get our stuff done because I knew a couple of days beforehand everything was going to shift towards the conference. And that was homeschool. That was his homeschool for him. He really helped out. He did the videography for things and he helped out with the audio part and the tech part. And so I counted that obviously as a homeschool. But I knew we were coming to that. And there were certain times I was like, okay, we're not going to start a new chapter in our read aloud because we're going to be in the middle of the chapter and we're going to take these couple of days off. So it's looking at it at the future as well. And so it's also looking at it as if we have holidays coming up and you want to have certain books. So you do have to plan ahead, especially if you want to borrow those from the library. Hint, hint. If you have not put your Christmas books on hold from the library, you might be too late. You might not get them. So this is your bug in your ear to go ahead and go do that right now, or maybe go on to something like thriftbooks.com and see if you can find some that are used. All right, let's go on to the next point I want to make. If every day your goal is just to check the boxes and check off the list, ask yourself, what are my kids going to remember from our homeschool? Are they going to remember that mom was a taskmaster, that she was controlled by her list? No, I'm not saying lists are wrong. I have got lists upon lists because for me, I find it easier to write it down so that I don't have to try to remember it. I also kind of like checking things off the list. But if that is the goal of the day, well, we have to do this because we have to check it off the list. That's what they are going to remember. This is a golden opportunity right now, these years with your children at home. It's a golden opportunity to create memories with them. So yes, you can create memories around curriculum, around science experiments, around nature studies and playing in the backyard and reading history and learning about geography and getting out the maps and traveling. You can create memories around all of those things. Also, now let's jump into now the flexibility part. We talked about the organization. Let's balance that then with the flexibility. One way you can be flexible is by being flexible with taking rabbit trails. So let's go back to the science, or let's go back to the history, or go back to the geography. Let's do the geography. I don't feel like I don't give that as an example very much. So, say you are studying a certain country and you're kind of talking a little bit about the culture. And I actually find that a really great way for geography. Instead of saying, let's just study all of it, the entire world and everything in this one homeschool year. What if you focused on maybe one continent or just some specific countries and you dove in deep And not only did you look at it on a map and you studied the terrain and you studied the weather, you could then maybe get into the politics and the culture and the history. And you could find some menus, find some food, cook some food from that culture and really immerse yourself, and your kids would know a lot about that culture. If you're like, I don't even know where to start, maybe just start with the culture of your own family, of your you and your husband. Whatever, maybe you have some French, maybe you have some French in your family, or Italian, or African, or I don't even Russian, whatever it is, study those. Maybe it's even like you're like, I'm, 2%, think of something, Irish. Everybody at St. Patrick's Day or in March, everybody's Irish then. Everybody talks about their 2%. So maybe you're 2% Irish. You're like, I really don't know much about Ireland. Then study that. That would be super fun, right? So be flexible in taking those rabbit trails. When you start to study something with geography, and your kids might say, hey, what about this? What about that? And they're asking some questions. Watch some videos, answer some of their questions. Maybe they really, with the geography, want to talk to somebody who is from that culture. Maybe you try to connect. You might say, hey, I actually know somebody from, we'll say, Japan. And maybe we can have them talk a little bit about it. They immigrated here when they were a teenager, and so they still remember, or they go back and they visit family. And how cool would that be, right? So be willing to take those rabbit trails. The rabbit trail might last one question and you give an answer and it's done in a minute, or it might last you days or weeks or months. Who knows where it'll go? This is learning when you take rabbit trails like that. And it's no less of learning than if you were actually using a curriculum telling you what to study and what to read, and it was like a textbook or something. What you're doing is not any less than maybe a textbook telling you information. Be spontaneous from time to time. This might be hard for some of you, and it might be easier for some others of you. The days that there were just, to be honest, it'd be to the point where I would be getting burned out. And I'm like, why am I even doing this? Part of why I'm doing this is to enjoy my time with my kids and for them to enjoy time with me, and then for them to enjoy time with each other. And I would decide sometimes in an evening after they were in bed, I was like, we are not going to do our regular homeschool day tomorrow. We are going to go and do something else. And I would come up with some idea. And it would depend upon the time of the year. Or maybe it was like cold and we didn't want to go anywhere, cold and rainy or snowy or something. And I would say, you know what, we're going to do a movie day. Or maybe it'd be like, we're going to watch The Sound of Music, make 10 some Sound of Music, and that's what we're going to do. And so those spontaneous days, sometimes I needed some type of mental health day, but also sometimes I was like, we need to get out of the house. We have been here too much. And I would plan some type of day trip or something, whether it was somewhere to a beach or a museum or a historical site, but be spontaneous. And if you're like, oh, I'm not spontaneous, it's very hard for me. Well, guess what? It's okay to plan your spontaneity. You could say, I just do not have a natural bent towards being spontaneous. I like everything planned out. Then maybe semi plan it out. Say, you know what? Every other Friday, we're going to be spontaneous. Or maybe that's too much for you right now. And you might say, one Friday a month, or one Monday a month, or a Wednesday. You can pick whatever day. It doesn't matter the day. Just planning, being like, okay, this is a day that we are going to be spontaneous. And we're just going to kind of see what we feel like doing or what you feel like doing. Maybe at the beginning, you don't necessarily ask the kids. You are the one that just plans what the spontaneity it is. You don't even have to tell them if you want to be extra spontaneous, but you might have to just kind of plan your spontaneity in, and then maybe it'll just kind of become something that you do, as well as maybe just planning more field trips in general, saying every other Friday or 2 Fridays a month. I remember one homeschool year because I felt like the year before we just were home a lot and I just kept drilling things in. I was like, you know what? We need to do more field trips because I know the benefit of the field trips and how great it was for our relationships and how great it was for learning. And I was like, okay, we are going to go on 2 field trips a month. And I set that as a goal for myself for that homeschool year. And it was such a great homeschool year. It was so much fun. We went and did so many things. And you might have a greater goal and say, once a week, we're going to do that. Go ahead. I knew myself. I knew that twice a month was going to be good enough at that point. Last thing I want to mention is that as a homeschool mom, and just as a mom in general, as mom and dads do, we focus so much on creating memories for our kids and things for them to remember. And then we start to think, are they going to remember this stuff at all? Recently, I was away out of town and with my husband and our youngest son, and we went somewhere and he did not remember being there at all. And it kind of broke my heart a little bit because I was like, we used to take walks here all the time, but he didn't recall because we used to live there. And it hurt my heart a little bit. And then I did eventually take pictures and showed my older two, and they're like, oh, yeah, they could describe exactly where we were. But it was just him. He just was just young enough that he didn't remember. But you know what? I have those memories. I have the memories of watching the three of them running down this path together and exploring and looking for frogs and tadpoles and watching the ducks. And I have those memories. And guess what? He and I created new memories at this place from the place that he didn't remember. So remember, as our goals are for our kids to create memories, you are also creating memories right now. These are the memories that you are going to hold for yourself of their childhood, and balancing having that organization because you have those goals and you have the things that you want to impress upon their hearts. That's so fantastic. I cannot recommend that, having that enough. But also tempering and balancing that with being flexible and meeting their needs and enjoying each other as well. There is that balance between the two. If you're looking for more help with this, this is where I'm going to encourage you to go check out your homeschool blueprint, where we're going to find that balance and we're going to get you on that road towards having those goals, but also really enjoying yourself during the homeschool journey. You can find that information at littlebylittlehomeschool.com/blueprint, and the link is in the show notes. Any podcast episodes I mentioned will also be in the show notes as well. But thank you for joining me today for Little by Little Homeschool Podcast. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening, friend. I'd love to connect with you more. You can find social media links in the show notes and share this episode with a friend who could use a boost to her homeschool. See you back here real soon.